Jai Radha Madhava Kunda Bihari. Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Gopi Jana Vallabha Radha. Gopi Jana Vallabha Radhari. Yasodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana. Yamunatira Vanashari. Jai Radha Madhava Kunda Bihari. Jai Radha Madhava Kunda Bihari. Radha Madhava ki jai. Good morning, everyone. Nice to be with all of you. So today we're reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 3, Chapter 23, Texts 49 through 57. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So a reminder that the chapter is entitled Devahuti's Lamentation. So who here has ever lamented? Only a few of you. Okay. I think most of us in this material world, if we've reached the adult age, we've lamented at some point, especially during high school days, right? So I think even though not everyone's hand went up, I'm sure you've all experienced lamentation in some form or another. And in this particular context, we're going to discuss spiritual lamentation, like her Devahuti's lamenting for something important, something spiritual. Okay, so we'll read some verses and we can take turns. I heard yesterday the microphones weren't working, or should we still pass them? Got them back? Okay. Do we have microphones though?
Yeah.
Okay, I'll start. So when Devahuti saw her husband about to leave home, she smiled externally, but at heart she was agitated and distressed. Again, this is something that we might relate to sometimes, right? So especially if somebody is about to leave for the airport and you want their, you don't necessarily want their last moments to be full of seeing everyone crying, right? You want to be like being happy for them, feeling, they can see our smiling faces, but inside we're feeling that separation, right? Especially from those who are dear to us in the spiritual sense. The next translation. She stood and scratched the ground with her foot, which was radiant with the luster of her gem-like nails. Her head bent down. She spoke in slow yet charming accents, suppressing her tears. And I'll just comment here quickly that Prabhupada mentions in the purport that when a woman scratches the ground with her foot, it's a sign that her mind is very disturbed. So that's something to look out for. But it's also, especially I think in the context of Indian culture, that was a thing, especially when people would would have bare feet, right? They're not no shoes, so you could see their toenails. They could scratch the ground, and we see this in the description of the gopis of Krishna. Right? There's some gopis scratching the ground with their feet, expressing some disturbance of the mind. Okay. Yeah, fidgeting. Yeah, fidgeting. Yeah, nowadays. Right. Yeah. So nowadays it's fidgeting toys. So that would be the modern version of that. Yeah. Yeah. So because there's so many people using it, it means that there's a high rate of disturbance in our society. Yeah, that's a good point. Okay, text 51.
Sri Devahudi said, "My Lord, you have fulfilled all the promises you gave me. Yet because I am your surrendered soul, you should give me fearlessness too."
And she's speaking to her husband here, text 52.
My dear Brahmana, as far as your daughters are concerned, they will find their own suitable husbands and go away to their respectable homes. But who will give me solace after your departure as in sannyasi?
Until now, we have simply wasted so much of our time in sense gratification, neglecting to cultivate knowledge of the Supreme Lord.
That's can you just read that one again? Because it's a really powerful, so I want everyone to really absorb that one.
Until now, we have simply wasted so much of our time in sense gratification, neglecting to cultivate knowledge of the Supreme Lord.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, so this is part of her lamentation. So we'll figure out like why she's lamenting, and this is it. This is the reason. Text 54.
Not knowing your transcendental situation, I have loved you while attached to the objects of the senses. Nonetheless, let the affinity I have developed for you rid me of all fear.
Association for sense gratification is certainly the path of bondage, but the same type of association performed with a saintly person leads to the path of liberation, even if performed without knowledge.
Whose work is not meant to elevate him to religious life, anyone whose religious, ritualistic performances do not raise him to renunciation, and anyone situated in renunciation that does not lead him to devotional service to the Supreme Personality of Godhead must be considered dead, although he's breathing.
My Lord, surely I have been solidly cheated by insurmountable illusory energy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. For in spite of having obtained your association, which gives liberation from material bondage, I did not seek such liberation.
Okay, so going back to text 56, that's the end of the chapter, by the way. So text 56 will read the Sanskrit. Nehayat karma dharmaya na viragaya kalpate na tirtha pada sevayai jivanapi mrito hisa. Want chat?
Nehayat karma dharmaya
Nehayat karma dharmaya
virakaya
na viragaya
kalpayai
na tirtha pada sevayai jivanapi mrito hisa. Nehayat karma dharmaya na viragaya na tirtha pada sevaya jivanapi mrito hisa. Do you know? Oh, go ahead, please.
Nehayat karma dharmaya
Nehayat karma dharmaya
virakaya kalpate
na viragaya kalpate Nachita Padasevaya
Jivan api mrito sa
Jivan Api Mrito Hisa
ayat
Nehayat Karma Dharmaya Naviragaya Kalpate Nachita Padasevaya Okay, thank you. So there's one on the third line there. I think most of you will know the meaning. So na means not, right? Not. So na tirtha pada sevayai. So what word do you recognize in there? Tirtha means holy place. Pada, feet, and sevayai, service, yes. So what does it mean altogether? Not That's a very creative explanation, but it's not quite. It's the tirtha pada. So the tirtha, the holy place of the Lord's lotus feet. So his feet are like a holy place. And sevayai, devotional service to those lotus feet, right? So not serving those lotus feet, the holy place. It's a very nice thing to meditate on, that the Lord's lotus feet are a holy place, a tirtha. Okay? So let's do the word for word together. Na, not. Iha, here. Yat, which. Karma, work. Dharmaya, for perfection of religious life. Na, not. Viragaya, for detachment. Kalpate, leads. Na, not. Tirthapada, of the Lord's lotus feet. Sevayai, to devotional service. Jivan, living. Api, although. Rita, dead. He, indeed. Saha, he. So translation together. Anyone whose work is not meant to elevate him to religious life, anyone whose religious ritualistic performances do not raise him to renunciation, and anyone situated in renunciation that does not lead him to devotional service to the Supreme Personality of Godhead must be considered dead, although he is breathing. Yeah. Purport. Devahuti's statement is that since she was attached to living with her husband for sense gratification, which does not lead to liberation from material entanglement, her life was simply a waste of time. Any work one performs that does not lead to the state of religious life is a useless activity. Everyone is by nature inclined to some sort of work, and when that work leads one to religious life, and religious life leads one to renunciation, and renunciation leads one to devotional service, one attains the perfection of life. As stated in Bhagavad Gita, any work that does not lead ultimately to the standard of devotional service is a cause of bondage in the material world. Yagyartat karmano nyatro lokayam karma bandhanaha. Unless one is gradually elevated to the position of devotional service, beginning from his natural activity, he is to be considered a dead body. Work which does not lead one to the understanding of Krishna consciousness is considered useless. Om Jnana-timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshur Unmilitam Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. So sadhu means one who cuts, right? So this is one of those cutting verses. Cut through our illusion, wake us up, right? It's kind of a stark reality of the material existence without a spiritual perspective on it, without any kind of spiritual connection. It's just like there's no eternal benefit, and therefore if there's no eternal benefit, it's just fleeting and it doesn't amount to anything, which is why it's considered useless, right? It doesn't help us, it doesn't actually touch our souls. There's nothing. Our souls remain kind of in a dormant state, and we just, the body and the mind and the different products of material nature are working, but they're not really the real us is not activated, is not alive. So I want to just kind of pull back for a minute and look at this context, Devahuti's lamentation. And do you remember what she's lamenting? What did she specifically point out that she's lamenting? You remember? Yeah.
Her husband,
Okay, her husband's leaving. And what about that?
she feels like she may not have some scrap with him, and she tries not value.
Yes. So she's kind of reflecting back on how did we spend our time together, especially recently, right? Very much sense gratification. What did I miss out on with this person who could really inspire me spiritually, right? It's something more. She could have received some eternal benefit from it, and yet she chose to do something that's more just material and fleeting. This is her perspective on it. And of course, these activities of sense pleasure can also be dovetailed into Krishna service, right? You can have family members for Krishna. You can do family life for Krishna, and so on. But she's lamenting that she didn't focus on the highest aspect of this association with her husband, the spiritual part, like really taking advantage of his association. Have you ever felt that way? Lamented that? Yeah. So what does that feel like? What do you, how does that come? How do you experience that? Do we need a microphone? I think there's two here.
It's like someone can walk in Vrindavan, but it'd be a really mundane experience if they don't have the knowledge of the place and they don't have the kind of spirit, like the inclination to receive it. And similarly, you can be in the association of a great devotee, but you can be so blocked that not much comes through.
Yeah, that's a great example. So you can be in the holy dham, the holy place of Krishna, and be completely covered over. Yeah, and I think that those who have visited the holy dham, most can relate to that experience, at least here and there, right? Because there's so much distraction on the external layer, like forget the deeper, like that deeper vision of the holy dham, right? Unless you're really guided by the devotees and helped with sadhus. So yeah, that's a really good parallel. And so similarly, the devotees are like walking holy places, right? Because they're constantly immersed in Krishna and his pastimes, they become the abode for Krishna, right? They're a walking holy tirtha. And so if we just only hang out with them and talk about like the latest football scores or like what's happening, in my mind, and I just, all of that, and we miss out on something, right? We miss out on this really powerful opportunity to be transformed by this holy place of a devotee. And so in that sense, it's a very appropriate connection, right? Relationship between those two. Any other thoughts on why she's lamenting? Yeah.
She's got a lot of kids now. She's got to raise a family.
She does have a lot of children, yeah. Yeah. So it's always helpful to have support, right? So, she doesn't specifically say that as one of her laments. On a material level, that's definitely a loss, right? To not have your spouse there to raise your children with. However, she's suddenly having this like higher perspective on it where she's lamenting something even more. It's a spiritual lamentation, even more so than the material. All of that is there too, like the loss of the relationship and the father for the children, all that. But even more so of a lament is the loss of something that's affecting our soul, right?
She's realizing, like, lamentation that she has fear within. I remember in one of the verses she asked that her husband to instill fearlessness, because I think she can appreciate how qualified her husband is, and that he can actually like give him transcendental qualities. So that's what she's asking for.
Yes. So she mentions fear. Let me find this. She said, "My Lord, you have fulfilled all the promises you gave me. Yet, because I'm your surrendered soul, you should give me fearlessness too." And then in the purport, Prabhupada says that the greatest fearlessness is the reminder that we are eternal, right? That we're not, that one who's taking the charge of being a leader, whether they're taking the charge of heading up a family, having children, whatever the leadership role is, it's their responsibility to give that, Prabhupada's saying, to give his ward freedom from the fearful situation of material existence. And material existence is always fearful and full of anxiety as long as we're connecting that we're on this body and I gotta like get some happiness from the situation, right? Then it's a fearful situation. So the real way to get fearlessness is to associate with those devoted. They're fearless. Why are they fearless? Why are the devotees who are, someone who hasn't shared it, want to share on that one? Yeah.
Once I found a bookmark with Srila Prabhupada's picture on it, and there was a quote. It says, "I'm eternal servant of Krishna. What is there to be afraid of?"
Nice, yes. So that realization of being an eternal servant, eternally connected with Krishna, therefore the fearlessness comes. And when we realize how amazing Krishna is, and we're part and parcel of Krishna, then we realize how safe we are being connected with Krishna. Any other thoughts on that? How to be, or why the devotees are fearless? Yeah.
Our bond with Krishna is the only bond that we like have that can't be severed. All these connections with people, they can be severed, and so Krishna is the only real bond that could give us comfort and security, and with security comes business.
Yeah. It's, yeah, the only shelter in a world that's transient, the only eternal relationship. And that's a real solace. I think that if we're not in connection with that, if we're not aware of that spiritual aspect, there's potential for becoming very fearful in this world. So let's say we find the perfect relationship and then we have the perfect children, we have the perfect family, right? There's always that, you're always kind of walking on thin ice. There's always that possibility that any moment I could fall through the ice, they could fall through the ice, we're all, and then we create this illusion of permanence by getting comfy in this world, right? I was recently in the airport and I was thinking this would be, there was a movie of that, somebody who got stuck in the airport. I forget the name of that movie. I think it was Tom Hanks who played it, but he got stuck between two countries. He couldn't go back to his country, and so yeah, you remember that? It's like I forget the name of it, but
No.
and he was stuck at the airport for a while, for like weeks or something. Yeah, and so I was thinking about that when I was in the airport, because it's very metaphorical for life in this world. Like, are we going to try to get comfortable in the airport? Let me bring my picture frames out and get them all comfy, and like my curtains up, and that would look kind of ludicrous in an airport, right? If someone started to unpack all their things and get comfy, like the terminal, yeah, being stuck in the terminal. And so in that movie, it was there was a lot of, he wasn't comfortable. It was a lot of angst, like, hey, I'm stuck here in this in between place. I can't go back. I can't go forward. Visa problems or whatever it was. I think it was a fictional story, but I think his country got dissolved or something, so he couldn't go back. But yeah, so when we're getting too comfortable in this world, it's kind of creating an illusion of there isn't thin ice, right? We're all fine. We have our family, and surround myself with family members and friends, so I feel more and more safe. Like, oh, this is eternal. But it just takes one moment to kind of wake us up and go, oh yeah, there was suddenly a death in the family, and it was a young person, 20 years old, and all of a sudden everyone's shocked, right? And that happens sometimes in the material world. Someone younger will die, and it will really shock everyone because we're not expecting it. And yet it happens over and over daily, every minute. There's people dying who are young and babies, right? So the real fearlessness can be granted. Well, first of all, is that someone who is feeling fear is actually in a good place for spiritual life, because it takes awareness to go, oh wait, I'm walking on thin ice here. That takes some introspection. Not everyone does that. Most people just want to kind of cloud it over, numb out, get their Netflix going, and just kind of avoid that scary topic that things are not permanent here, right? We want to feel, we want to find safety. But someone who is starting to notice that, like, hey, I'm so attached to everything here, but everything is out of my control. Any moment it can be taken away. And then they start to feel some of that material fear. They're the perfect recipient for spiritual life. And they are one of the 4 types of people that Krishna says approaches him, right? The ones who are full of fear, who are distressed, coming to Krishna, because that is eternal. That connection is eternal. Or coming to the devotees when they see a devotee. Wow, this person's moving through life. It doesn't seem to be filled with fear and anxiety. How is that? I want to connect with that person. I want to imbibe what they have. What is that strength? What is that solidness that they have as they move through this life that's constantly changing? How are they so steady and equipoised? Let me try to be around them so I can get some of that, and I can learn how to do that. So I was recently at Sadhu Sangha, which is in Dallas, and there were 3,100 devotees. It was a huge, biggest ever. This was the 11th year, and I felt that shelter. That was something that I experienced when I was in the kirtan, in that hall, surrounded by devotees, and devotees who have been chanting so sincerely, and devotees. There were also senior devotees who have been chanting for decades so sincerely and helping others, right? And so you could feel that shelter in their midst. Like, this is okay, we're okay. And even if something scary happens materially, we're all safe together. It's like the ultimate bunker, like a safety place, safety net, right? When you're with the devotees, because you're doing something eternal with all of these others who are focused on Krishna. We're all linked in that way, and so we're safe, right? We're all protected. And I was also reflecting on when the devotees, in some kirtan, I was thinking how when the holy name is chanted through the lips of someone who has deep faith in the holy name, real relationship with the holy name, it has an extra sweetness to it. Have you ever experienced that? You're in a kirtan, someone who's really has a real relationship with Krishna and the Holy Krishna. Basically, when you say someone has a relationship with the holy name, it means they have a relationship with Krishna, because Krishna and the holy name are not different. So I was experiencing that in some of these kirtans, and just hearing the devotion of the person who's singing and their depth of connection with the holy name, it has an extra transformative effect on the heart of those who are attending or who are sitting there, right? On my heart, really. And it feels like shelter. It feels like safety, because it is. That's the eternal, fearless position. I think there was one other thing I was going to share about Sadhu Sangha. Let me see. Yeah, there was another. There was a moment where I saw. You ever see something in life, or just a little, I don't know, interaction between people, and you think, oh, this is like a metaphor for something spiritual, right? So I saw this little child who, she was being cared for by other people, but her mother was some distance away. She was maybe 5, and she was, all of a sudden I noticed she was crying, and she was saying, like, I want my mother. Or she was like crying, and she was being, she was safe. She was being cared for by her friend's mother or something like that. But she was feeling separation from her mother. She was crying, and then the adults were trying to figure out how to get her mother, because it's a huge hall, and they're trying to figure out where she is. And in that just brief little thing, I thought, and then I saw her going to her mother, right, and feeling she was very happy, back with her mother. And so I thought, well, that's how it needs to be when we're chanting the holy name, is that we feel only fully at home when we're there with the holy name, that we're there with Krishna, that we're like this child who's kind of uncomfortable and not feeling at ease as long as she doesn't have her mother, right? And so in that same way, let our hearts and let our minds be like only fully comfortable when we're back in that shelter of the holy name or with the devotees. So that was a realization I had from seeing a child. Yeah. So her lamentation is basically spiritual lamentation. She's lamenting the lost opportunity for getting more spiritual association, and she's also lamenting the passage of time. I don't know if you remember that, but she mentions time. Like, so much time went by and we spent it in this way, but I would have liked to spend it in a more eternally profound way. So the benefit of spiritual lamentation, so if you ever feel this, it's a good thing, right? Some of you raised your hand that you've experienced this before, lamenting, like, oh, my dear friend left, they moved out of Krishna house, and I spent so much time with them doing things that, I don't know, I wish we could have done things, I wish I could have taken more advantage of the fact that they love Krishna and I love Krishna, and we both want to talk about Krishna more, or we both want to do some service together. But now they're gone, and I feel that regret, right? So when we do feel that regret, it's such a wonderful thing, because why? Why is it wonderful to feel spiritual lamentation or spiritual regret?
Like doing service for the Lord during a period of separation, the highest form.
Yeah, okay, yes. In the ultimate sense, the separation from the Lord and his devotees is the highest form of, you said the highest form of separation. The most transformative experience on a spiritual level. That longing for Krishna, longing for his devotees. So yeah, it's a glimpse of that.
We have something, maybe we're thinking about it, like not as deeply, but when we're lamenting and thinking, wishing we had that, we're really absorbed in those like thoughts and thinking about Krishna and his devotees in a deep way. That's one of the deepest Krishna conscious experiences we can have. Just because I'm really absorbed in thinking about like how they help me serve Krishna, how we spend time together in Krishna conscious activities. So
Yeah, very nice. Any other thoughts on that one? Yeah, so it's always transformative to feel spiritual lament and to want more of something spiritual, like wanting more of spiritual time with somebody. And it gives us, another thought I had is that another reason it's helpful is that it motivates us to do it over again next time. Next time I'll do it over in a better way. So I'll get a second chance, I'll get a third chance, I'll get a fourth chance, because devotees will keep coming into our life. We'll keep having opportunities to really have these kindred spirits, right? These people who also really want what we want, which is Krishna service. We want to help share it with others, right? That kind of kindred spirit. So we'll get another chance. And if I messed it with this last one, let me now, with that regret, let me now see how I can do more this time around so I don't regret. So that when this person leaves or I leave, we felt like we really had the quality over even quality over quantity, right? The quality is what's important. Did we spend that quality time at least once doing something eternal together? Yeah.
Thank you for clarity. Now I'm getting it. Maybe I'm getting it right. But there's a challenge as we regret the wasted time to become too self-absorbed or even depressed. So this call it unprocessed grief. The grieving over wasted time. And it's actually our very existence is on like you said, on a very thin ice. So it's filled with grief all the time. Wasted time, loss of loved ones, just daily affairs. So as we don't process that grief, really affect us in a negative way in terms of the mental health. But how do we maintain that enthusiasm? How do we process grief in a healthy way with enthusiasm that Krishna is so kind, Buddhists are so kind? Get another chance. So don't lament over. As I say, don't cry over the spilled milk, but try to do better. So that enthusiasm will actually, and determination and confidence, everything that Rupa Goswami has taught us, will maintain that kind of healthy perspective on what's coming. Otherwise, it can really affect us unhealthy.
Yeah.
Affect.
For years, right? It can go on and on if we don't address it in a healthy way. Who here has experienced grief? Raise your hand if you've experienced grief. Okay, so almost everyone. So yeah, grief is something, it comes when there's something that there's no, it especially comes, it comes in different ways for different people, but it especially comes up when there's no way of changing something in the past. It's over, the person's gone, or there's something that I can never really, right? The passage of time has happened and things have changed, and there's just a grief, this feeling of loss. And that, like you said, it's very common in this world. It's pervasive throughout our experience here. From birth to death, it's full of that experience. So now I'm really happy that now in spiritual context, there's more opportunity for processing grief in healthy ways. Like even in Alachua, they just started a group, a weekly in-person group in Alachua. So if anyone's struggling with grief, they can go and attend. Yeah.
I really love this topic because I'm currently moving through grief myself, just being here in Florida and detaching from my entire family because I'm on a spiritual journey and spiritual path, and they're my family. But I wish Nishta was here, but we had a beautiful conversation last night before going to bed, and I was just so excited to have that conversation because it's like I'm really obsessed with just chanting, and I'm obsessed with Krishna and just hearing his name. And we begin having a conversation, just asking each other, well, why do you love Krishna? And then she asked me, well, why do you love Krishna? And just hearing each other's like life stories and how, everyone, we go through so much, but then we continue carrying like so much happiness and smiles and laughter in our hearts. So just being here, I just was just saying like it's such a huge gift, and definitely for me, it's such a huge gift for myself when I am in the moment of the pastime of detachment. So yeah, Haribol.
So the gift of spiritual friends when we're going through difficult times, right? And the opportunity to speak with them about uplifting things that make us happy. Yeah, it's really, really wonderful. Devahuti, she is lamenting the upcoming loss of that exact opportunity to be able to connect with someone on a spiritual level and have these conversations about why do you love Krishna? I want to mention something that at Sadhu Sangha there was a really nice kirtan. There were actually a few like this, but it was called a Leela kirtan, right? And it was intended to attract like local people and stuff, to have more like Western people come. And it was very professionally done. There was like theater/dance combined with kirtan, and the story of Parikshit Maharaj was told, and which is the background to the Bhagavatam, right? Parikshit Maharaj was cursed. He had 7 days to live, and therefore the Srimad Bhagavatam was spoken to him by Shukadeva Goswami. And so that was profoundly, like beautifully done in this Leela drama, Leela Kirtan, they called it, pastime Kirtan. Sri Prahlad was singing, and then, there was lots of instrumentals and stuff. And it was very moving because, particularly for one reason, for me, Parikshit Maharaj had 7 days, and in that time period, he sat down with all these sages. All these sages sat down with him, right? And he's hearing these pastimes. He's hearing these stories. And at the end of his life, there was a description in this Leela Kirtan that they did. At the end of his life, he asked all of the sages there to keep chanting the holy names of Krishna, like keep up the chanting. And so then they described, and it's hard to put words to this visual, but they were doing like this little image of Parikshimar is leaving, and then all the sages are still chanting something like that. And it was just very, all of a sudden I realized after he left, there must have been such a moment of like a celebration for all these great sages who had been there to support him, right? They were there, and it must have also been maybe some spiritual sadness, like lamenting his association being gone, but also joy for him moving forward. And just what that must have been like for all those sages who were there with him to see his journey in 7 days, his transformation from the time he got cursed to the end of his life, which is just a week, right? A week is not very long. Like, what's it, Wednesday? So just last Wednesday, he would have been cursed today, right? It's like really short if you think about it. And so it touched me very deeply to think about how the devotees around us are cheering us on. They're happy for us when we progress in spiritual life, and they're there for us as our cheerleaders and our shelter. There's one last thing I wanted to mention. We ended up discussing more about spiritual lamentation than the topic I was given. But the topic that I was given is that it's from that verse we read, that anything that's not connected to Krishna is useless, right? And it becomes like a dead body, right? That we talked about that. We read that purport. And so I wanted to just give an analogy of that. And again, thinking about airports. So imagine you're going to go on a flight, right? And you're going on Delta or something, and it's at 3:00, and you're going to the Gainesville airport, and you go there, and then you decide, actually, this airport is really comfortable. I don't really want to go on my flight. I'm just going to hang out here. You would be missing the purpose of the airport. Similarly, if we're not using our existence to connect to a higher purpose, spiritual awakening, then it's like being in an airport, not taking the flight. It's like having the purpose of life is not met. And so that was an analogy that just my father gave to me yesterday when we were talking about this verse, and I thought that was really appropriate, right? There's other analogies too, when you're not living your purpose. So it's not to be just, I guess, a final word of maybe caution, but I know all of us here in the Krishna house is a very mature, taking things into context in a very mature way. But someone might read that verse and think, gosh, okay, so they might read it and become a real spiritual fanatic, right? They might say, well, anything that's not directly connected to Krishna, that's it. I'm a dead body when I do it, so I'm not going to do it. I'm just going to like let go of all my material duties and just kind of become a wandering mendicant. And it could lead to an unsustainable practice of Krishna consciousness if it was taken out of context. So I just wanted to mention that Prabhupada, in the purport, it says it's actually a gradual process. He doesn't use that word, but Prabhupada uses the phrase gradual process many, many, many times throughout his purports and classes. And in the purport, if you read it carefully, it says, any work one performs that does not lead to the state of religious life is useless activity. So it's not saying any work that does not lead to pure prema bhakti is useless, right? It's any work that does not help uplift our consciousness to that gradual process of leading us to Krishna. So everyone's inclined to some sort of work. When that work leads one to religious life, and then religious life leads to renunciation, renunciation leads to devotional service. See? Gradual, gradual, gradual. So you can think, well, I have these certain proclivities and maybe they're not directly related, but let me find a way to work and act in this world in a way that keeps uplifting my consciousness towards something higher, right? At the root, at the basic level. And then to add on to that, okay, now bhakti for Krishna, now connection to Krishna, now service for the devotees, right? You can keep advancing. But at the basic line here is that actually, Prabhupada does say gradually, unless one is gradually elevated to the position of devotional service, he is to be considered dead body, right? So gradual. So just remember that. So we don't have to feel discouraged that, oh, I'm still doing something that's seemingly mundane, but it's not like that directly connected, and therefore I'm a dead body, right? So Any thoughts on, I'll end here. Any thoughts or questions that you have before we conclude? Yeah.
Thank you very much. This is a great class. It's just really, really relevant for me right now in my personal life, and then also my biggest challenge with Christian House right now is that I know that at some time this chapter in my life will end, and it's the best chapter of my life. And I want to hold on to the moment. And I know, one, how important it is, like, to get as much out of Krishna House while we're here, just from my own experience, then from people who have already, like, moved on and they're older and they have family. They talk about how important Krishna House was building while they were building the foundation for it, not just important, but of paramount importance for the challenges that come up ahead. And last year, when I look back at my time at Krishna House, there's so many things that I didn't write down that I wanted to, besides just class notes, like personal, uh, you know, uh, personal things that I experienced that I wanted to hang on to and keep. So my question is, it's like, if we know we're in a moment, like if we're having an association with the vote, we have a friend there that's so special to us, and we know at some time things end, like how do we hold on to those moments as best we can?
So it sounds like you have, if I'm hearing correctly, you have a little bit of regret for not having written more last year, right? Like some, like what we've been talking about, that some loss, some regret, feeling of sadness around it. And that could be a motivator to, well, let me start now doing that. If that's something that inspires you, right? There you go. Yeah, you have your notebook. So yeah, that's the first thing that comes to mind, actually, because it's something that works for me. I think everyone has their own way of doing it, but I resonate a lot with writing. I write, I journal, like even at Sadhusanga, I just had my notebook and I just jotted down things that really struck me, or moments that I had with devotees that were inspiring that I didn't want to forget. And then later I went to my journal and wrote them in. What other thoughts? Anyone else have a way that they do it? Yeah.
I don't.
Okay. Any other comment on that? How to, when we know something's going to end, how do we hold on to it, or how do we retain some of it? We can't, obviously we can't retain exactly, but we can, yeah, we can have the writings. Anyone else does anything to it? Yeah.
Okay. I'm not gonna brag, but I wrote a book. So, you know, Prabhupada has over 60 books, and you can write about your journey. And many people are going to want to read that. So, if that's something that you ever think about doing, then go for it.
That's nice. Yeah. Leaving a legacy of our books. Yes, Prabhu. Oh, can you pass the microphone?
Something of Jonathan Prabhu was mentioned. Regret kind of could be in a line of tamagun, like I'm regretting about something that happened. Something you mentioned, that trying to be grateful at the moment is sattvagun. To live, you can only live now. You can't live in the past, you can't live in the future. And Bhakti Maharaj says that in terms of having those moments, he said our heart should become a little treasure chest where we put these moments, and when we need to, we can open it and reflect on it and pick them and look at them and get inspired again when we actually feel down, or we feel, I guess when you feel down. But you have this treasure chest on your heart and you store stuff in it. When you need to, you can open it up.
Who said that?
Bhakti Maharaj.
Oh, very nice. So yeah. So having a treasure chest in your own heart doesn't even have to be written down, but you just go, okay, I'm going to take this moment and remember it, like put it there, make an impression in my mind. Like there was a children's book when I was growing up. This little kid, she would take pictures mentally. She would go click. She would say click because she wanted to remember a moment. And then she would just say the word click as if she was taking a photo of it, and then she would store it into her mind or her heart. And so like that, we can take impressions of what we've experienced. And the way to do that is to be fully present when you're experiencing something. That's how we remember it later. Presence and consciousness. Like right now, I'm with this friend and I'm really hearing what they're saying and we're really having a powerfully uplifting conversation. And then because I'm so present with it, it changes something inside of me. And then I remember that. I remember that transformation. So, and then one other last little, I guess, tip would be voice notes help me also, like recordings. Like sometimes I've had really wonderful conversations with somebody who's dear in my life, like a friend or a family member, and then I'll ask them, oh, can you just quickly say, can you just in a nutshell just say again what you said? And I keep some voice notes that inspire me. So thank you so much for this wonderful association from all of you, and I hope you have a beautiful day. Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Gaur Premanandi, Hari Hari Bol.
Hare Krishna, there was just one more thing. If you could please kindly extend your kind blessings to Ari today, because today is his birthday.
Birthday. 23. One strong.